I'm going to need you to step back from the counter, sir. The clerk said it at a volume chosen for the room, not for the man in front of him, but for the couple near the elevators, so they would know it was being handled. The man he said it to had a 7-year-old asleep on his shoulder, a canvas duffel bag at his feet, with the strap mended in black electrical tape, and 11 hours and 2 airports in the same clothes. The name set in brass above that entrance was his last name. Nobody working that night knew it. 11 minutes after he was told there were no rooms, 2 people who came in behind him were handed key cards while he stood there watching. Before the sun came up, one man would lose his job, and one contract would be finished. Julius Carraway had not planned to stop at the Wexler that night. He had planned to drive home. The flight out of Lisbon left 4 hours late, and the wheels came down in Cincinnati past midnight. Home was 51 minutes north on a dark highway. He was 41 and a single father, and there was a 7-year-old asleep in the back seat. And those 2 facts had stopped being separate considerations somewhere in the last few years. So he took the downtown exit instead. The Wexler was the flagship, 11 stories of limestone on a corner that had been a gravel lot the day he signed the first lease. 9 properties carried the Carraway name by then, and this was the one people meant when they said it out loud. 13 years earlier, the whole company had been a 22-room motel outside Dayton, with a sign that flickered on the second E. He stopped at his own buildings without calling ahead. Not as a test. The word was too dramatic for what it was. A scheduled visit produced a scheduled hotel. There was a second reason the overnight crew would not know his face, and modesty had nothing to do with it. The company carried his father's name. Horace Carraway had been dead 6 years, and Julius had never put himself on anything since. No press photograph, no portrait, no ribbon in front of a camera. Lorraine Ridley, who ran operations, had a line about it that went around the company for years. Half the industry thought Carraway was an old man in a bow tie who died in the 80s, and the other half thought it was a bank. And 7 weeks before that night, the overnight shift at the Wexler had stopped being hotel staff at all. The work had gone to Silvercrest Staffing Group. Silvercrest was a contractor. The people running this building between 11 at night and 7 in the morning were employed by another firm and sent here on assignment. In June, it had been a clean line on a spreadsheet. On the floor, it meant the 4 people working tonight had never met anyone from the company whose name was over the door. Before this goes further, where in the world are you listening from right now? Put your city in the comments. Every one of those places has a front desk in it somewhere, and somebody standing behind it who decides in about 4 seconds who belongs. Imani was 7. She had gone under before the plane finished climbing, and stayed that way through the descent, through customs, through the long fluorescent walk to the parking garage, one hand shut around his jacket collar the whole time. 49 pounds, all of it in his left arm. He set the duffel bag down beside his foot and shifted her higher on his shoulder. The lobby at 1 in the morning smelled like cold air and lilies. There was a florist's arrangement the size of a shrub on the center table, replaced every Tuesday, whether anyone was awake to see it or not. Somewhere down a service corridor, a floor buffer ran in long, slow passes. The elevator doors were brass, and they held the whole room upside down in a smear of amber. One person was working the desk. His name was Shane Beckett. He was 26, and he had been coming to the Wexler on assignment for 5 weeks. Julius noticed the blazer before he noticed the face. Charcoal, cut wrong through the shoulder, and not the slate blue the hotel bought for its own people, with the Carraway monogram stitched small of the collar. Silvercrest dressed its people in Silvercrest's clothes. What happened next took 4 seconds. Shane looked up. His eyes went to the duffel bag on the floor, then to the child asleep on the man's shoulder, then to the jacket the man had been wearing since Lisbon. Then they went back to the screen, and behind them something had already finished. "I'd like a room," Julius said. "One night, whatever you have." "I'm going to need you to step back from the counter, sir." He said it at a volume chosen for the room. The couple waiting near the elevators heard it, which was the point. Then, with no break at all, he moved into the other voice, the smooth one, the trained one. "We're fully booked this evening. I do apologize. There are a couple of properties over on 4th. You'd have better luck down there at this hour." That was the part Julius kept coming back to afterward. Not the first sentence, the second one. There was no seam between them. A man could do the first thing and say the second thing in the same breath, and never feel himself cross anything. He asked again because he wanted to be sure of what he had heard. Anything at all. A room off the service side, something being held, a rollaway. And was there a night manager on the floor? There was, Shane said. And then he gave the sentence back word for word. "A single father learns early what it costs to argue in front of a sleeping child." Julius did not raise his voice. He did not say the one word that would have ended it, which was a name, his own. He picked up the duffel bag, moved 4 steps down the counter, out of the way, and stood there with his daughter's breath going warm and slow against his neck. Behind Shane, turned at an angle no guest could read, the screen held the night's inventory. It was not a mystery, and it was not a judgment call. It was a number, and it had been on that wall the entire time. 8 minutes later, the revolving door turned again. A man and a woman came in off the street, 30s, coats open, sharing the handle of one hard-shell case. They went straight to the counter. Julius was 4 steps away, and he heard all of it. And that is the part that mattered afterward. He did not deduce it, and he did not assume it. He heard it. They had no reservation. The woman said so herself, easily, the way a person says a thing she has never once been punished for saying. Their connection had gone down in Chicago. Was there anything at all? Shane came up off the stool. His shoulders went back. His hands found the keyboard fast. And the voice he used was not the trained voice from 8 minutes earlier. It was the other one. Warm. Glad to be of use. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Julius watched the clock over the elevators, because by then he had decided to be exact about everything in that room. 3 minutes and 40 seconds from the door to 2 key cards in a paper folder on a night that was fully booked at $289 a night. 1. That was where he started the count, standing off to the side with Imani asleep against him. One person turned away tonight while the room sat empty. He had no idea yet how far back the number ran. Imani stirred against his neck and said, not really awake, that his heart was going fast. Julius asked for the manager on duty. Kent Stroud came out of the back corridor 90 seconds later, and the first thing to notice about him was the folio. Leather tucked under his arm, and in everything that followed, he never once opened it. Kent was 46. He had been the night manager at the Wexler for 7 weeks, exactly as long as Silvercrest had held the contract. And somewhere along the way, he had come to believe that authority was a thing you carried where people could see it. He did not ask what had happened. That was the tell. A man walking into a dispute he knows nothing about has to open with a question. Kent came the length of the lobby at an unhurried pace, stopped beside Shane instead of between the two of them, and stood with the counter at his back and the guest on the far side of it. He already had the shape of the thing. Somebody had handed it to him on the way out. I understand there's an issue with availability, Kent said. Julius told him what he had seen, in order, with no adjectives in it anywhere. He had asked for a room and been told the hotel was full. 11 minutes later, 2 walk-ins with no reservation had been given rooms. He had heard them say they had no reservation. He would like to know which of those 2 things was true. Kent listened with his chin slightly raised. "My people apply discretionary standards at the desk," he said. "Those calls belong to them, and I back them." Discretionary standards. Julius turned the phrase over where he stood. It was a good one. It had the shape of a policy without being one. The kind of language that exists so a decision made in 4 seconds by a tired man's eyes can be sent upstairs and come back down wearing a jacket. "Your full name," Julius said. "Your title, and the name of the company that employs you." Kent gave all 3. He gave them the way a man gives his name, when he has already decided the other person can do nothing with it. Julius did not write anything down. He did not repeat them back. He held his eyes on Kent a beat longer than the beat required, and then looked away. And by then, the 2 names were somewhere they were not going to be mislaid. Before that night was over, both of them would be said out loud in that lobby. Only one of the 2 men would still have a job when they were. 29 years earlier, 11 blocks from where Julius was standing, Horace Carraway worked the overnight security desk in a building not so different from this one. He did it for 22 years. He was there when the bars let out, and there when the bread trucks came. And in all that time, the people who owned the place learned his first name and never learned one thing more about him. The duffel bag was his. He carried it to work every night of those 22 years, and when the strap tore through at the buckle, Julius was 9, and he remembered the kitchen table, and he remembered the smell of the tape coming off the roll. His father did not go out and buy another bag. He wound the strap in black electrical tape, 3 tight turns, and pressed the end flat with his thumbnail, and went to work. The tape has been renewed a dozen times since. It has never once not been tape. Inside the flap, in ballpoint, in his father's blocky capitals, there is a single line of writing. Julius knew it by heart. He had never said it out loud in a room with strangers in it. What his father handed him was not a grudge. It was a measurement. Horace could tell inside a minute of a man coming through a door how that man had already decided to treat him, and he never argued with any of it. He simply took the reading and kept it and went on with the shift. He taught his son to take the same reading. He never taught him what to do with it afterward, because in 22 years, nobody had ever put him in a position where there was anything to do with it. Julius was standing in that position now, and that was the whole of it. If this was happening here, in the building every other building in the company was measured against, then it was not one clerk having a hard night. It was a shape. And he could not see the shape from inside an apology. The moment he said his name, everything in this lobby would rearrange itself around him, and he would never learn another true thing about it. So he did not say his name. He carried the bag to a chair by the window, sat down, and let them come to him. Kent Stroud did not go back to the corridor. He took up a position near the concierge stand, half turned, and every 90 seconds or so his eyes went across the lobby to the chair by the window and came back. He did not speak to Julius again for 19 minutes. He was not waiting for anything. He was letting the man be looked at. Yolanda Serrano was on the concierge desk that night. She was 30, and she had worked nights at the Wexler for 2 years, first for the hotel, and now, since June, for Silvercrest. She heard all of it. Julius watched her stop turning the pages of the reservation book. Not close it, not push it away, just stop, with one finger flat on a page she was no longer reading. It stayed there. That is what the room did. Nobody in it approved of what was happening. And nobody in it was going to say so. And those 2 facts sat down together and got comfortable, the way they always do. It does not take agreement to hold a thing like that in place. It only takes enough people deciding, one at a time, and for perfectly good private reasons, that it is not theirs to speak into. At 22 minutes past 1, Kent crossed the lobby. He said the building was private property. He said that a person who had been advised the hotel could not accommodate him no longer had a reason to be in the lobby, and that if the gentleman would collect his belongings, this could stay simple. He said the word simple twice. He mentioned, without appearing to threaten anything, that the district station was 4 blocks away, and that officers came quickly at this hour. Julius stood up. He had not raised his voice. He had not asked for anyone's supervisor twice. He had not put his hands on the counter, or said the word lawyer, or woken his daughter to make her part of it, or told a single person in that building who he was. He said all of that out loud, evenly, in 4 short pieces, so that everyone standing within 20 feet had to hear the list of things that had not happened. Then he said the thing Kent was not braced for. He asked him to call security. He said he wanted it on the log, with a time on it. And he wanted the officers called too, if that was where this was going, because he wanted a record that somebody other than the 2 of them had written. The 2 security officers came in from the east corridor and stopped, one on either side of the chair. Neither of them touched anything. That is not what they are for. They stood where they had been told to stand, close enough that the geometry did the work, and one of them looked at the carpet. Imani woke because her father's arm changed. She had slept through the descent, and through customs, and through a man telling him to step back from a counter, and what brought her up was the muscle under her cheek going hard and staying hard. She lifted her head, and she was not sleepy. She was all the way there in about a second, the way children are. She looked at the 2 men standing over them. She looked at Ken Stroud's face. She looked at the way her father was holding himself, which was a way she had never seen before. Then she asked Kent a question. "Are we the only ones who can't have a room?" She was 7. There was nothing in it. No edge, no complaint, none of the things an adult puts in a sentence to make it a weapon. She had watched 2 people take a folder with keys in it, and she had not been given a reason, and she was asking for the reason, which is what you do. Kent said nothing to her at all. His eyes went to Shane, then to the officer nearest the window, then to Julius. They went everywhere in that lobby except down to the person who had spoken, and every single adult standing there watched him not answer a 7-year-old, and that was the answer, and everyone got it at the same time. Imani took her time with it. She was working something out, and she worked it out the way she worked out everything, seriously, without hurry. "You said hotels are for people who need somewhere to be at night," she said to her father. Then she turned back to Kent. "So what's this one for?" Something went through that room. The couple by the elevators had stopped talking a while ago. Now the man put his phone in his pocket. One of the 2 officers changed his weight from 1 foot to the other and did not change it back. And over at the concierge desk, Yolanda Serrano, who had kept her finger on the same page of the book for 19 minutes, went completely still. Not the stillness of a person listening, the other one. The stillness of a person hearing something said out loud that she had been carrying around silently for 7 weeks. Julius did not answer Kent, and he did not answer the room. He crouched. He went all the way down until his eyes were level with his daughter's eyes. One knee on the carpet, the bag against his shin. And for a moment, the men standing over them might as well have been furniture. "Listen to me," he said. "None of this got made by you, not one part of it. You were asleep the whole time, and it was already like this before we came in the door." He stayed there. That was the part that mattered, not the sentence, the staying. He held her eyes and did not stand up and did not look away,
and he waited, and he watched her take it in and believe it, and only then did he let go of her chin.
Above them, Kent Stroud's jaw set. What hardened him was not doubt. Nobody in the world stiffens like that from doubt. It was irritation. The specific irritation of a man who has been made to wait inside his own decision while somebody kneels on the floor and does something decent in front of witnesses. And there were more witnesses now. 2 phones had come up along the wall by the lilies, held low at hip height, the way people hold a phone when they have decided to record something and have not decided to admit it. Kent told the officers to walk the gentleman and his daughter out to the street. Julius stood up. He lifted Imani onto his hip and settled her, and he did not resist anybody, and he did not raise his voice, and he did not take one single step toward the door. Then he reached into the duffel bag. He took out his phone, out of the same bag that had been the reason for all of it, the taped strap swinging once against his knee, and he made one call. And the call was so short that a woman across the lobby said afterward she thought the line had dropped. He said a name. He said the word lobby. He listened, and he put the phone back in the bag. Imani put her mouth close to his ear so nobody else would get it. "Are we leaving?" "No," he said. "We're staying right here." The service car has a different tone than the guest elevators. Flatter. 2 notes. No chime. A sound that goes off 40 times a night in that lobby and has never once made anyone turn around. Every person in the room turned around. Lorraine Ridley came out of it. She was the chief operating officer of the company. She had been upstairs since Tuesday for the quarterly walkthroughs, and she had come down in a raincoat over a t-shirt with her staff badge clipped on upside down. She had put on shoes and she had not put on socks. She crossed the lobby and went past Kent Stroud as though he were a plant. She stopped in front of Julius, and she did not hurry. And what she did then was the formal thing. She said good evening to him and used his last name, and she apologized for the wait, and she asked whether Imani needed anything. It was the greeting you give a person at the start of a board meeting. In that lobby at that hour, with 2 security officers standing 3 feet away, it landed like a dropped plate. Then she turned so that the room got it too. "This is Julius Carraway," she said. "The name on the front of this building is his father's name." That was all she said. She did not list what he owned. She did not tell anyone whose chairs they were standing next to or whose contracts decided their Tuesdays. She said one true thing and stopped, and the room did the rest of the work itself, which is the only way that kind of sentence ever actually lands. Shane Beckett put one hand flat on the counter and left it there, and his face went the color of the counter. Kent Stroud did not move at all. Not a hand, not his eyes, nothing. The total absence of motion that comes over a man when the last 4 seconds have rearranged the previous 4 years. The 2 officers stepped back from the chair, and nobody told them to. Over by the lilies, one of the phones came down and went into a coat pocket, and Julius stood there with his daughter on his hip and looked around the room. Not the way a man looks when he has won something. He was reading it. He went face by face, counting how many people had been standing in that lobby while it happened, and how many of them had said a word. And the second number was 0. And it included some people who were going to feel that for a long time. Whatever else you take out of this, take the next 40 seconds. This is the part that stopped being about a hotel. Kent Stroud found his voice again. It was brave and it was stupid. And those 2 things live nearer to each other than people like to admit. He said he had not known. He said nobody had told him, that there was no photograph anywhere in the system, that in 7 weeks not one person from the company had come through on nights, that if he had been given any indication at all, that is where they kept stopping. Not at a period. Each sentence started with something in it and ran dry before it got to the end. And every person in that lobby could hear it happening. He was not lying. Kent Stroud genuinely did not know who he had been talking to, and he was saying so, and all of it was true. Julius let him go all the way to the end. He did not interrupt, he did not nod, and his face did nothing at all, which left Kent nothing to push against. "You had no idea who I was," he said. "You're right about that. And it isn't the thing that gets you out of this. It's the thing I'm standing here about." None of what he did came from anything Julius had said or asked for. It came out of 4 seconds at a counter. Tape on a strap, a sleeping child, a jacket that had been on an airplane. That was the whole of the information. Everything after it was paperwork built around a decision already made. Then he asked Shane to open the night audit. The night audit is the count the desk runs after midnight. Every room in the building, sold or empty, closed out so the morning starts from a true number. It is the one record in a hotel nobody can talk their way out of afterward. He turned the screen so the lobby could see it, and he read it out. 7 weeks since Silvercrest took the overnight shift at that property. In those 7 weeks, 19 nights logged as fully booked with rooms standing empty. On those 19 nights, 31 people turned away at that counter, at $289 a night, from a building that had somewhere to put every single one of them. 31. He said the number a second time, slowly, so the whole room could carry it. Some of them were single fathers, with the kid asleep on their shoulder at 1 in the morning. Everyone got sorted at that counter by somebody who never asked them anything. "My father worked nights for 22 years, Julius said, and he said it to the lobby rather than to Kent. "Security desk, 11 blocks from this corner. 22 years of being the man people were comfortable walking past. He took it home at 7 in the morning in a bag with tape on the strap. And my daughter watched you do this. She's 7 years old. She had to ask a room full of grown adults what this building was for, because not one of you would tell her." "I can't fire you," Julius said. It was not what anybody in that lobby was braced for. "You don't work for me. You work for Silvercrest. They're the only ones who can end your employment. And they'll do it on their own schedule. Here's what I can do. Your assignment at this property is over as of right now. You won't be back on this floor, or in any building with my father's name on the front of it. And Silvercrest will have that in writing before your shift would have ended." Kent Stroud did not argue. He had argued about every single thing for the last hour, and now there was nothing left to argue with, because he had understood it. He pressed his thumb hard against the corner of his eye, once, the small automatic motion of a man buying himself a second in a room where there is nowhere left to put his face. He was off the schedule entirely inside 3 days. Then Julius went to the counter, and he went slowly, so that the boy behind it had time to work out what was coming. "You're not losing anything tonight," he said. Shane started to say something. Julius waited him out. "I don't want an apology. Apologies are cheap at 1 in the morning, and you'd mean this one. What I want is for you to sit down with how tonight felt from where I was standing, and to still have it next month. You're good at the work. That was never the problem. Nobody ever taught you what the work is actually for, and that's on the people who put you behind that desk, and I'm one of them." He said the rest of it plainly. Retraining, and not the skills kind. And when the night shift came back in-house, and it was coming back in-house, there would be a desk in this lobby with his name on it if he wanted it. Same desk, different company. Shane nodded. It was a small movement, and there was nothing performed in it. Then Julius crossed to the concierge stand, and he dropped his voice until it would not carry past the two of them, And the fact that nobody else in that lobby heard any of it was the entire point of it. "You watched all of it," he said. "You knew exactly what it was, and there was no way in this building for you to say so. I don't hold 1 second of that against you. You had no standing in this room, and a person with no standing can't speak. That isn't a thing that's wrong with you. It's a thing that's wrong with how I built the room." Yolanda Serrano did not trust herself to answer that. "When the shift comes back," he said, "I want you running guest services on nights. Not because of what happened tonight. Because you're the only person on this floor who knew the whole time. And I need people who know things standing somewhere they can act on them." Last, he turned to Lorraine Ridley. "Pull the Silvercrest contract in the morning," he said, "and put 2 numbers on the same page when you send it up. The first number. The contract saved the company $18,000 a month across 9 buildings. The second number. $8,959. 31 rooms at 289 turned away from 1 desk in 1 building in 19 nights. No board anywhere ends a contract because a man was unkind in a lobby, Julius said. Boards end contracts that cost more than they save. So give them both numbers and let them do the right thing for the easy reason. I'll take it either way." He said the standard once, to the whole room, and he did not build up to it. Every person who comes through that door. Every time. Not on account of the coat. Not on account of the bag. Not on account of whether they look like they were expected. Dignity first, and everything else after it. Then he looked down at the floor of his own lobby for a moment. "My father spent 22 years inside buildings like this one," he said, "and he was never once allowed to stand in the middle of one and be listened to." That was when Imani pulled on his sleeve. She had been awake for 40 minutes. She had asked 2 questions that a room full of adults could not answer, and she had now arrived at the thing that actually mattered to her. She wanted to know whether this hotel had the little soaps. What went through the lobby then was not laughter, exactly. It was what a room does when a thing everybody has been holding up together finally gets set down. A release with an edge left in it, because not one person standing there was going to forget the previous hour. And the weight that had been sitting on Julius Carraway's chest since 1 o'clock did not lift. It moved. It went somewhere with more room in it. Nearly 4 months later, on an ordinary Thursday afternoon in March, a family came into the lobby of the Wexler. There were 4 of them, and they had been in a car a long time. A folded stroller, a cooler bag, sneakers, the particular quiet of children who have used up everything they brought to do. They were dressed for a drive, not for a lobby. Yolanda Serrano came out from behind the concierge stand before they reached the desk. She never looked at the cooler bag. Not at the shoes either. And not past them toward the drive to see what they had come in. She went to their faces and asked how long they had been on the road. And the woman's shoulders came down about an inch. Julius was in the far corner by the window, and this time he was in the book. Expected, on the schedule, announced a week ahead. He was not carrying the duffel bag. Imani was. She hauled it up onto the chair beside her, worked the flap open, and read out loud the line her grandfather had put inside it in ballpoint, in blocky capitals, some year before she was born. "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." She asked what unawares meant. "It means they didn't know who they had," her father said. Neither of them said anything else about it. One thing has to be said plainly, because the rest of it does not hold without it. Almost every version of that night ends the other way. The man picks up his bag, carries his daughter back out, and drives the 51 minutes north because he is too tired to argue and too tired to stay. No elevator opens. Nobody says his name to the room. He never tells anyone because there is nothing to tell. A man was informed a hotel was full, and small things do not survive being said out loud. They only get carried. The one reason this night turned is that the man being sorted happened to own the building. That is not a moral. That is an accident. Which is exactly why a standard cannot wait to learn who somebody is. What arrives when an elevator opens is not dignity. It is recognition. And recognition only ever goes to people somebody has already decided are worth something. And the harder half, which took Julius most of that night to see, the man behind the counter was being sorted too. Different blazer, different company, 7 weeks into work that could end as a line on a spreadsheet. What moved through that lobby ran downhill the way it always runs, through people with just enough footing to hand it to somebody standing lower. A person gets treated well before they have proven anything. That is not a policy, and it is not good business, and it does not need either of those words attached to it. A place either has it at 1 o'clock in the morning in front of nobody, or it does not have it at all. Across the lobby, a woman who had once kept her finger on the same page for 19 minutes was carrying somebody's cooler bag to the elevator and talking about where to get dinner this late. And by the window, the old duffel sat open on a chair with the tape going gray on its strap. And next to it sat the 7-year-old who had asked a room full of grown adults what the building was for, her feet not yet reaching the floor.